from hobbyist to technopreneur. Hi, Wilson. Let me unmute Wilson now so that, okay. Hi, Wilson.
Hi, Janet. Yeah, can I start?
Yes, Wilson, please start. Have fun. Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me today. Thanks also to you, Miss Janet, for your introduction. So, this is my presentation. And my slides are only made up of 15 slides. So, not really a lot. It's about 30 minutes. So, that gives you ample warning time. And the agenda is listed as follows. I will attempt to outline the history of my path from a hobbyist to becoming a technopreneur. Along the way, I will highlight some of the key lessons that we learned and want to share with you tonight. So without further ado, let's change to the next slide. Let me just wait for a moment to make sure that all of you have loaded the next slide. So the path that I took from a hobby to a business, I started with my university days at UP in 1979. This is where I earned my BS degree in administration and accountancy. As part of the coursework, it required me to take up COBOL programming. UP Diliman back then used the IBM System 360, which you will see in the picture. We did not have physical access to these mainframe machines. Our interface was through punch cards that had to be ordered in a particular sequence and submitted to be compiled and run. Each compilation and runtime took about a week to get back to us. This meant that debugging also took a week to do. Needless to say, because of that sad experience, because it was cumbersome to use, at that time I didn't really think much of computers. Then in 1983, Apple II came out. Of course, for me, I could not afford the true Apple unit, so I went to Elcano in Binondo, and together with one of my classmates, Ernie, we bought an Alexa model bare board self-assembled Apple clone. The unit came with a variant of BASIC. It's called BASIC A. I used it to program, did some picks and pokes in assembly language for me to run an arcade game. You know, the games back then were Pac-Man, Space Invaders. These are games that are no longer running today. Now, at the top of the screen, you will see what looks like a green spreadsheet. That is the precursor of what you see as Excel now. Back then, the mother of all spreadsheets started with VisiCalc. This was particularly useful for me when we were doing 10-year financial forecast using manual methods by putting in the figures in columnar pads. So you can imagine the amount of erasures and snowflake or the whiteout fluid that we were using to cover up our errors. And being manual and being tied to each of the process, one error in one column would result in me having to fix those errors for the next columns. So when I used my Apple clone with VisiCalc in the spreadsheet application, it became apparent that this was a superior way to doing the manual 10-year forecast, where VisiCalc allowed one change in one cell to result in a wave of updates to all the related cells. I thought it was amazing. This opened my eyes to the potential of computing and technology. Then in 1985, IBM rolled out their IBM PC, and the cool computer program then was Lotus 123, which combined spreadsheet, word processing, and presentation. This was what this market was taken over eventually by Microsoft Office. And together with the IBM PC at the bottom, you will see a modem. I started with a 300 baud rate, 300 BPS modem to connect to a BBS, Bulletin Board System. By now, during the 1985-1986 era, I was hooked and I had to buy every cool new stuff out there. Books, manuals, magazines, cloned software disks. I even spent money on the modem to connect to the BBS. And of course, as the bills piled up, I had to start finding more money to buy my toys. And when I ran out of money, and with the encouragement of my friends, my wife and I decided to open up BitStop in 1989. At a newly constructed mall called Bugnay Commercial Center. My wife handled the operations, as back then I had a day job with my family business in construction supply. So these are the lessons that we learned during that era. Most of the other lessons were really business related, so I just filtered it down to the ones that are specific to the technology sector. So number one, as you can see from the graphic, piracy is a crime. We were the only store that were selling PCs with licensed software. This meant our price for systems were much higher than the rest of our competition. The competition simply bundled the pirated software and gave them away for free. To top it off and to add insult to injury, our competition claimed that we were overcharging our clients for the quote-and-unquote free software. But then this was an ethical dilemma for us. I could not build a business off the back of a criminal act. We had a long-term vision to grow the business, and we could not grow it using illegal means. I see as part of the attendees some of my senior staff like Marlene, who was with me around the start of BitStop, so she can attest to this. While IPR meant that we lost about 60% of our hardware sales, it also forced BitStop to provide better service to our clients. This so-called quote-and-unquote handicap pushed our entire team to get certified. We trained our staff well, we got them certified, and we provided faster and better support to our clients. This premium service distinguished us from the rest of the competition. And this IPR curse turned out to be a blessing in the long run. It opened doors to new clients and new revenue sources. However, as one will soon realize, our technology sector was unlike any other buy and sell business. The pace of change was faster. You had to be careful with inventories. If you don't stock, you have nothing to sell. However, if you had stock items and did not sell them in time, within a few months, the price of those new units would have dropped by 10 to 30%. So an MIS, a Management Information System, was critical to our business. My wife and I computerized our operations and managed our inventories closely. But by 1990, aside from the earthquake that hit us, competition was now growing. Margins were shrinking in the computer side business. We started looking for other products or services to sell. Around this time, BitStop was itself stymied by the lack of telephones. You will see the old model telephone. Those are the rotary dial telephones. Back then, it used to take months or years before PLDT could install a line in your place. This highlighted an opportunity for a new business that we could offer. I remember calling up Reggie Casas over at EasyCall, and in the end, we ended up being EasyCall's marketing arm in Pangasinan. Let me just wait for the slides to synchronize. So by this time, my hobby was turning into a full-fledged business. To talk about the EasyCall experiences doing paging in Pangasinan, while our initial target clients were medical professionals, we soon found that the elite of Pangasinan were buying the pagers not for the technology or for the service, but more for a fashion accessory. Nothing said I'm a VIP more than the beeping sound coming off the pager that was conveniently tucked outside of their pants. And being a marketing arm had its limits. Our primary and perennial problem with EasyCall was the range of the base unit. We could not get farther than 15 kilometers from the base unit. So although we were servicing Pangasinan, we covered a mere 30%. Because we were just a marketing arm, we could not invest and expand the coverage of the pager. We did not own the infrastructure. And that really taught us a lesson in our succeeding ventures. We also continually ran out of pagers to sell. The demand was so great for communications and fashion that we did not have enough stocks to sell. As to the lessons learned, I can share with you the one that's, I think, most valuable to us was when PLDT competed with EasyCall by introducing Beeper 150. So around this time, hopefully some of you are already teenagers, so you would have heard of Beeper 150. It was a David versus Goliath scenario. Our friends back then were all telling us to stop what we were doing and get out of the paging business, as PLDT was the dominant operator and we had no chance competing with a Goliath. But we stuck it out and competed head-to-head with Beeper 150. It was my first lesson in what we call the first mover advantage. Because we were ahead earlier than Beeper 150, we already had saturated the market. Anyone who needed a pager already owned an EasyCall pager. We also gave away EasyCall calling cards that was customized to each of our clients. It bore the client's pager name and number and the EasyCall paging lines. The client would turn around and give this to their friends and associates. By the time Beeper 150 came in, most of the clients did not want to switch because they did not want to waste their time to inform their friends of the change in the paging service. This was my first taste in what we now call customer switching cost. Again, technological advances are very fast in the field. By 1994, Motorola came out with their first mobile phone. It was a brick phone, and there was an even bigger unit that I had my driver carry around with me whenever we went out. That was how big it was. This did not get us concerned, but then pretty soon, Nokia came up with phones that could not only do calls, but they could also do what they called back then as texting, SMS. When we looked at this technology, it was clear to me that it was already time for us to find another service to offer, because this Nokia phone with the SMS ability made pagers obsolete. Remember in the other slide, I was talking about BBS, bulletin board systems, and how I use modems to connect to it, and from there to connect to the rest of the world. By 1994, I had progressed to calling up via long distance to a dial-up internet service in Manila. This was run by the late Dr. Willie Gan of Moscom. This internet connection allowed me to access a growing pool of knowledge. However, there was a price for all of this connectivity. I remember I was paying around 6,000 pesos a month just for the long distance bills alone. And my salary in our family business back then was just 2,000 pesos a month. Clearly, I needed to set up a local node so that I can connect to the internet, enjoy its benefits without having to pay for long distance charges, and make it into a business. So again, this is where one of my hobbies became the source of a future business. And so I convinced Dr. Gan to go into a franchise model and let Bitstop be the first Moscom franchisee for Pangasinan. We got a 64 kbps lease line from PLDT that supported 16 dial-up lines. We grew this business by patiently educating the market about the benefits of internet. Within a few months, Moscom expanded, and then the problems started to show up. Network congestion happened, and our clients were complaining of the slow access. Again, the lesson here was that since we did not own the entire infrastructure, we only owned the part of infrastructure in Dagupan, we were still dependent on our franchisor for the quality of service. Moscom also did not have the quality of service clause built in to each of the franchisees. As a result, there was discontinuity, and there were erratic levels of performance and satisfaction levels among Moscom franchisees, each of which offered different qualities of service and different pricing. All of this failed to contribute to increasing the value of the Moscom franchise. Finally, Janet was asking me about this. What happened to Moscom? Well, Moscom is still around, but Dr. Willie Gan did not have an exit strategy. At one point, Digitel wanted to buy into Moscom. But during those times, it was the dot-com boom, and Dr. Gan wanted a higher price for it. Digitel ended up setting their own and competing with Moscom instead. In hindsight, Moscom could have become bigger with a telco partner. Then Dr. Gan got diagnosed with inoperable carcinoma when the dot-com bubble burst. So in this slide, you will see that just these 10 companies alone accounted for $2.7 billion that were lost during the dot-com bubble burst. So getting back, by 1998, things started to settle down, and our bandwidth suppliers, which were PLDT and Digitel, decided to enter into the dial-up market and compete with us. This was a lesson in what we call co-opetition, where we competed and cooperated at the same time. The question in our mind was, how do you compete and cooperate with your suppliers? The answer for us was to find our niche. Look at where the telcos are strong and look at where they are weak. Fortunately, while the telcos were experts in lease line and connectivity, they did not have people with requisite skills for networking and computing. This was our niche, and that is why we decided to spin off our data center and hosting services by setting up BitStop networking services. As you will see, by the time BitStop already had technical certifications. Being a Cisco and a Microsoft partner, we are also one of only 2 A+ certified authorized service centers in the Philippines. Jane and I were invited by Microsoft to attend the formal launching of Windows Media 9 in LA sometime around this time period. Then by 2005, we noticed the call center industry picking up. We had the networking skills, we had the connectivity, we only needed call center management skills and software. Enter Mr. Tim Keefe of TGK Associates, who then introduced us to Five9. And with their software, this allowed us to jumpstart our call center and offer services to our clients in the US. So we set up FarmOut Central in Touch Incorporated. This is our call center and BPO company in Dagupan. We learned a lot during this time. So some of the lessons we learned includes a mantra that was shared to me by Sam Hakoba, who was previously with Microsoft Philippines. The Microsoft mantra then was start small, think big, scale fast. So we had this vision to be the biggest call center in Pangasinan, but we started with 1 seat, eventually growing it to over 60 seats in 5 years. I also learned the value of partners. We could not have expanded or set up our call center without the help of partners. Call centers require capital, skills, networking, and technology. I realized that while we have most of it, we needed partners to complement our weak sides. So with this, I am really happy to have partnered with great people that made our collective decisions on policy and directions even better than I would have done alone. The only downside for me was the hardship for me to adapt to the slower pace of decision making. Up until this moment, I never had to wait for other people to decide on a matter. I am used to making decisions on the spot. But with partners, the downside would be to also wait for them to convene and to decide on a matter. Another lesson learned in call center, and this one was really a knowledge gem shared with me by Tim Kiff, who always said that the life of call centers depends on the hiring, retaining, and training of key people that will carry the business for you. He was really right. Again, through the years, we are very fortunate to have picked, trained, retained, trusted, and loyal key people that have since become shareholders in FarmOut. Finally, FarmOut grew in large part due to one very good client who was very patient with us and who was our learning partner along the way. And I would say that we were very lucky because had we not had this very first client, we would not have grown this big and this fast. By 2000, year 2007, the Philippines started to raise the taxes. VAT went up from 12% to 10%. From 10% to 12%. But the margins, on the other hand, were dropping to less than 5%. So in a sense, we were paying more taxes than what we were earning, and we were the ones shouldering all the risk, doing all the hard labor. It doesn't seem fair. So it was time for us to look farther afield. I had an invitation from my Singaporean brother-in-law to check out Singapore, and at around that time, Singapore was very open to foreign talent and investor. It also helped that Tiger Airways launched in Clark, and we could get round-trip tickets from Clark to Singapore for as low as $80 round trip. This was even cheaper than going to Cebu or Davao. So I checked Singapore out and I loved it. I filed the papers and we set up FutureGen as our base of operations in Singapore for the Asia Pacific region. The immediate lessons that we had to learn very fast here is that since we are no longer physically with our staff back in the Philippines, we could not manage our businesses using the old methods. And this is what we call the MBWA, management by walking around. We now needed to adapt to a new way of managing people. I would say it's more akin to coaching rather than managing. So we were also very much influenced by the new management techniques like management by measuring deliverables and results. So in a way, it also helped that we had very loyal and trusted key personnel that we could rely on. As the pace of change accelerated, it became apparent to us that our business was really in knowledge management. It wasn't really in selling products or providing certain service. People engaged us or bought stuff from us because they depended on our support. Our support in turn depends on our level of knowledge. So knowledge became powerful. Knowledge became critical to our operation. And as a corollary to that, to expand our knowledge, we had to expand our horizons. And with that insight in mind, for the next 3 years, we embark on a rapid level of training, learning, trips, study tours, etc. So you will see in the picture, I'm shown with Mark Spencer, who's the creator of Asterisk. This picture was taken in Kuala Lumpur, where I attended the Asterisk conference. I also joined the CCAS, Call Center Association of Singapore, where I attended their almost monthly seminars and helped me understand how to get our operation, pharma operation, to become world-class. I also took advantage of Singapore's CTREP. CTREP is a funding for IT professionals where I was fortunate to get as much as 80% subsidy off of the PMP, PMI, and ITIL training. And by year 2009, I was also lucky enough to qualify for a slot in the highly competitive NUS School of Computing for Masters in IT program. From there, I joined a study tour where I went to Beijing and Shanghai. Let me show you the picture. There's our group at the background of the Great Wall of China. We not only toured China, but the study tour allowed me to visit companies like Renren, Bankel, and PP Live. Now, most of you may not know this, but Renren is the Facebook of China. And I suspect they have equal to or even more members than Facebook. Bankel is an e-commerce company that sells to Beijing and Shanghai, only those two cities. Their their consumer promise is that any orders placed with them will be delivered in 24 hours. So you can imagine that they hit it off very big. The first year, they only had 2 million of revenues, but by the second year, the 2 million revenue increased 100-fold to 200 million in the second year of operation. PP Live started out as a startup in a university. Bill Yao, the student founder then, used his programming skills to use P2P systems to stream football matches and share that with his friends. From that hobby of his, it went on to become China's leading streaming platform. Then by year 2010, Groupon was launched, iPad was launched. These developments encourage us to develop yet other offerings of our own. So my current pet projects are here. Q Systems, Cloudcast Streams, and Heartland Malls. I partnered with Mark Gutierrez, who also holds a master's degree from the Gupan, to do Q Systems and Heartland Malls. With Cloudcast Streaming, I partnered with Ian McLeod, who hails from the UK. Last year, as Janet told you, together we attended Tech Ventures 2011, where we heard the latest views from the VC's points of view. People like Nick Zhang, Tim Draper of Draper, Fisher, Jurvetson, and others spoke their minds, and I absorbed everything. In that same year, I also got myself my next higher level of ITIL certification, which was the intermediate RCV, Release Control and Validation. And finally, by December 1st of last year, I finished my master's at NUS. So most of you would probably be wondering, what is the next wave? The current darling of the tech crowd today seems to be centered around, let me wait for your screens to synchronize, around mobile. I've also shared this with my staff. The current projections are by year 2014, 65% of all cell phones will be smartphones. So this has a radical effect on the way internet is accessed. By 2014, we foresee internet to be accessed more from smartphones rather than desktop. And as of February of last year, 2011, more smartphones were shipped than PC desktop. So this is the next wave that's coming. But again, I caution you that the pace of change is very fast in technology. While today it may be mobile, tomorrow or in a few years it will be something else. So constantly we're looking for looking at our businesses, what's the constant? If we step back, we see that we rode several successive S-curves in technology. So what are S-curves? This graph will show you a series of S-curves over here. S-curves outline the diffusion of technology from early adopters, here where it's a bit flat, to the early majority where it starts to go up, to the late adopters, and finally, when the critical mass is achieved, it will start to go down and be only adopted by the laggards. You will note that we have had very good timing in judging which of the new S-curves to jump onto, from computers to communications and to virtual work in our farm-out call center. And for those, and the question here really is, you know, we cannot afford to be constantly guessing. Is there a constant, the one thing that will remain the same regardless of technological advances? Where I think this constant will be, at least for the next decade, will be in the areas of collaboration and knowledge management. I am fascinated, being a practitioner myself, of how do you coordinate teams in geographically dispersed places and time zones to work towards a common goal. And so here is my plan. And I show you a snapshot from a movie. Some of you may have seen this movie, some may have not. And for those of you that have seen this movie, this is a scene from Stand and Deliver. If you haven't seen this movie, I urge you to go out and watch this. The actor is Edward James Olmos. He plays the character, a true-to-life character of Jaime Escalante. Jaime Escalante is a Bolivian who taught in the U.S. As a high school teacher who successfully inspired his dropout-prone students at Garfield to learn calculus. And let me tell you, I struggled through calculus in my university days. In 1982, 18 of his students passed the challenging advanced placement calculus exam. The passing rate doubled the next year. My belief is that for me to learn more about collaboration and knowledge management, I also need to teach this. So I'm doing this as a shout out to schools and other institutions that may be interested. I am hoping to get offers from you to teach and share what I have learned in NUS around knowledge management and collaboration. So lessons for startups. First, the definition, and I like this definition from Harvard Business School's Howard Stevenson. Entrepreneurship is not risk-taking. On the contrary, entrepreneurship is the pursuit of an opportunity without regard to resources that one currently controls. So it will take a bit of a time for you to understand the implication of this sentence. But essentially, remember, it's the pursuit of opportunity. So what do you need to know when you are starting a business? So let me share with you some of the benefits and risks of having your own business. When you own your own business, you control your own time. I can get to go out of the country anytime I need to. I don't have to file leaves or ask for permission. I can work at night. I can work in the afternoon. I can work during the daytime. Anytime I want to work. I get to choose who I can work with. I don't have to suffer annoying people when I don't have to. If you work for others, you don't have this luxury. You are stuck with whoever is in your section or department. I can get to help people by using the resources of our business to help others. Typically, this would be our clients, our employees, their families, our partners, our suppliers. We get to build new stuff. I remember how Bitstop revolutionized the printing industry in Pangasinan and La Union when we deployed laser printers with Adobe PageMaker to replace the clunky system being used at the time by printers. They were using IBM Roadrunners that took forever to do typesetting. Finally, to borrow a phrase from Microsoft again, we can change the world one device at a time. I hope that this talk may inspire one or more of you into taking the plunge and deciding to be a pioneer in whatever opportunity you see in front of you. Now, starting a business is not without risk, so better that you know of some of the risks now so that you can prepare for it. So the most common that I see in Asia is the stigma of failure. When you fail, it's like a badge of shame. That may be true in the past, but in the high-tech world, VCs like people with resume in failed startups. It shows that they have experience. It shows that they were willing to take risks. So now you see we put in question marks with the term stigma of failure. When you fail, it is slowly becoming a badge of honor rather than a badge of shame. The next downside risk to starting your own business is the fear or worry every day, every night of running out of money. You need money to pay payroll. That is the most common worry of entrepreneurs. You have to make sure that people who help you are well paid. And then the third line is, sometimes because of pressures, you may end up losing the balance between business and life. So take care that the business does not end up owning you instead of you owning the business. Finally, there will be opportunity cost. If you are as good as you think you are, then people would like to hire you and they are willing to pay good money for you. And that is what you are giving up. So make sure also that you weigh this when you decide to jump in and become an entrepreneur. Now, I've been asked by Janet also to talk a bit about why Singapore. So because I think it's important for you to know that the world does not revolve around the Philippines alone. In Asia Pacific, China and Singapore, and because of the English language, Singapore is becoming the center here in Asia Pacific for business. Let me share you 4 major areas where Singapore excels over the Philippines. First, legally, Singapore has signed up a lot of free trade agreements with over 18 countries. Free trade agreements enable a business to import and export virtually at 0% tariff. So you can make Singapore your base of operation, and from Singapore you can sell or buy stuff into and out of Singapore. So you can do trading. Legally, they also have very good framework in IP, intellectual property protection. I remember a case. I filed a trademark application in the Philippines. It's been over a year now, and I had to engage a lawyer to follow up, and still no word yet. It hasn't been denied. It hasn't been approved. Over a year, and I had to engage a lawyer. In Singapore, for my trademark application, I merely need to go to an online form, submit the requirements, and in 3 months I got the application approved. This is how easy it is to do business here, which leads us to the business-friendly environment in Singapore. Let's talk about taxes. A new business in Singapore enjoys tax-free status automatically for the first 3 years. Tax-free. And when you go out and buy stuff, the counterpart of VAT in the Philippines is what they call GST in Singapore, 7%. You compare that to 12% in the Philippines. Plus, the NRF has over millions of Singapore dollars that are ready to be given in grants for entrepreneurs that set up business in Singapore. Regulations also favor investors and shareholders in Singapore. As a side note, in the Philippines, when I was doing business, we were always scared to accept checks because more often than not, checks issued in payment would more often than not bounce. And then you'd have to go through all the legal system of filing a case of estafa and, whatnot. In Singapore, knock on wood, people send checks by mail as payment to us, and none of the checks bounce. They're very strict over here. To the next point, Knowledge Hub. Singapore leadership are very visionary. The major universities here have tied up with the centers of learning elsewhere. Like NUS has tied up with Duke University for their medical profession. NUS also ties up with Yale, and a host of others like Harvard, Wharton. They all have tie-ups here, and Singapore dedicated a plot of land where where A-star research is being done. There are two huge complexes. One is called Biopolis, and the other is called Fusionopolis. Biopolis is a research center aimed at life sciences. Fusionopolis is aimed at engineering sciences, dedicated to research where the finest PhDs were enticed to relocate to Singapore. This is the Knowledge Hub. Finally, peace and order. You guys know what the peace and order situation like is in the Philippines. Over here, we can walk in the dead of the night and we do not have to worry about getting mugged. The political conditions here are very stable, and there's really a respect for the rule of law. So finally, those of you that are probably thinking, hey, you know, what Wilson said is true and it matches my situation, how do I start? So, you know, 3 easy buttons for you to remember. Number 1, since you're starting this, form your team. Don't go it alone, solo. Find people that complement your strengths and covers up your weaknesses, right? And then once you have your team, you execute on your vision. And of course, you will need money and funding. The good news here is I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of companies that are willing to invest in good ideas. So I would encourage you to look up the Startup 100 project that we have running with Janet. Start pitching, and see, let your ideas float out there and see how many people are interested. It will also give you feedback, valuable feedback on how to fine-tune your business idea. And I would like to share this with you. This is what I always tell my kids, look out for that thing that you love to do, even if you don't get paid. Because if you do what you love, you will never have to work a day in your life. Always remember that. Because when you run your own business, it will not always be going up. There will be times when it's going down. And when you have passion and you love what you're doing, these are the things that will sustain you during the low seasons or the low periods. And Janet also asked me to include some recommended resources for those of you that are interested in starting up. And these are some of the few that come to mind. This was recommended. Dragon's Den is a BBC program. I think it's available there in your cable channels. This was one of the recommendations given to me by my professor and concurrently NRF head honcho, Professor Francisio, Dragon's Den. Look up that program. And my guru, I've always admired Guy Kawasaki. He was an evangelist for the Macintosh, and he went up and started his own VC firm. It's called Garage Ventures, The Art of the Start. Who also, by the way, I hope I am allowed to say this. Well, I'm still covered by NDA, so scratch. If you have the time, you buy the book, read it. It contains a lot of nuggets of wisdom on how to start your own business. Then, for those of you that are interested in setting up your businesses in Singapore, I urge you to go and look up IE Singapore, the Ministry of Manpower, Spring Singapore. And obviously, it doesn't hurt if you are well connected. And I urge you to join networking sites for professional, LinkedIn. Janet and I are there. Facebook for friends and social network, and Twitter. And I guess that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wilson, for that great presentation. So this is now an opportunity for everyone to ask their questions to Wilson, so that let's take this chance to learn more from him. So if you have any questions at this time, just press that raise your hand button, or just type your questions using our questions box and we will start asking Wilson. Okay, Wilson, here is the first question from Joseph Monhe. How much do you need to set up a company in Singapore? And perhaps you can discuss other requirements as well.
A very good question. If you are a Singaporean or a Singapore PR, permanent resident, it may surprise you. You need only $1 to set up a business. $1. Now, if you are coming from the Philippines, so I can safely assume you are not a citizen nor a PR, then you can come in using what the Ministry of Manpower calls the Entrepass. So Entrepass, you need at least 50,000 Singapore dollars paid up, of which the applicant must own 30%, at least 30% of the 50,000. So I hope that answers your question, Joseph.
Okay. And then I have another question from Sar Castro. I am planning a startup. May I ask if how much is the percentage that I give to my teammate? If I have the investment, I plan to give them shares. Based on your experience, what is the percent of shares do you recommend?
Did I get the question right? You broke up a bit a while there. What percentage of share do I give to my employees? Was that the question?
How much is the percentage that he can give to his teammates?
Teammates.
Or maybe the people that he will invite to join his startup, whether as an employee or as a partner.
There's really no hard and fast rule there. The guiding rule I practice myself is what we call the rule of karma. Just be fair. Just be fair to everybody you work with and talk it out. One thing that you should be aware of when you start up a partnership of sorts is to think of the end. Always think of the end. By that, what I mean is, okay, you start up and you say, let's say you gave 10% or 20%. You always have to think of what do we do when we decide to break up or close the business. And for that, I learned from one of my mentors in the Gupan, now Mayor Benji Lim. You know, you need to talk about how you will dispose of your company's asset if the time comes. You need to talk about a fair way of setting it. So what Mayor Lim taught me then was the apple parable. You know the apple parable? So the way it works is you have two kids that want to share an apple. How do you make sure that the apple is shared equally? So the mother goes ahead and says, okay, I give you the knife. The first kid gets to cut the apple. The second kid gets to pick which side of the apple he wants. So I leave that as a tip or a lesson.
Okay, that's interesting. One cuts it and the other one gets it. So I guess
Gets
that's
to choose the first side. So you can really make sure that the guy who cuts it will really cut it in half, fairly in half.
Okay. Is it possible to start a business with zero capital?
Yes, of course. It's always possible. You just need to find investment partners.
Okay. And then,
But, you know, speaking about that, what I feel here is the Philippines has an advantage in terms of digital and IT based projects. No? Unlike the industrial age, where wealth is measured in terms of real assets like land, factory, machinery, in the digital age, wealth is measured in terms of knowledge. So your currency now is your knowledge. The more you increase your knowledge, the higher your so-called measured wealth. And you can exchange that wealth for actual money, right? So again, digital age, the new currency of wealth is not physical assets but knowledge. So in that sense, you need lesser capital if you want to start a digital business.
okay. Sar was asking earlier about the apple thing. One cuts it, one gets to cut the apple, and the other person gets to pick which part of the apple he
Correct.
or she picked. That's
Has
what.
the right has the right to select.
Okay. And then, in which social network are you most reachable?
I check Facebook every day, and right now because of my smartphone, even on the road, it's become addictive. Facebook. But then also every day I have to check my LinkedIn because all my professional contacts are there.
Okay. And in our webinar announcement, we linked to Wilson's profile, and then if you all join the Startup 100 list in LinkedIn, where we added our webinar participants, where we invited them, and of course for Dispatch, we're going to invite also them to the LinkedIn group so they can also interact with you there. Here's another question. The question of competent personnel as well as personal retention is very common. I know people who have to closely supervise their business personally on a daily basis and can hardly wonder to myself, how do the big companies do it? How can one grow a business if you need to supervise every part of your business just to help make sure it is free from theft, pilferage, and the like?
I think I myself I'm guilty of that old way of managing people. I have some staff on the on the presentation itself, and they will see. They also know how I evolved my management style from what we call the management by walking around, right, to really management by objectives and management by results. And I've been sufficiently impressed and surprised by my own people when I shifted to that. They've shown resilience, proactiveness, and they were able to deliver on each and every one of the deliverables that we expected them to. So really, it's you need to trust your people that they can do it.
Okay.
Yeah. My wife also adds in train and hire and recruit properly. Obviously, not everybody will be like my key personnel, that they think for and in behalf of the company. So you have to really select. So it starts with your recruitment campaigns.
Mm-hmm. How do you measure your company's intellectual property?
Very good question. Before, we used to measure it by the number of IT certifications that we hold. But then somewhere along the timeline that I showed you, I got tired of recertifying every other year. So like when I got certified in Windows NT, and then after a few years, Windows 2000 came out, and then Windows 2003, and then Windows 2008. This is not even to mention Cisco CCNA, which I had to retake 2 or 3 times just to recertify. So I don't think certifications are a proper way to measure it. But what I can share with you is how we compensate people in our company. So one way we do it is every time because we are a support company, essentially we sell knowledge through our support services, right? So each time a client asks for support, there will be a ticket. And we classify the ticket into 3 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3s are the hardest. Level 1s are the usual, password reset. Level 2s are somewhere in between. So my assumption here is that the better my people are, the more level 2s and level 3 tickets that they will do. And that is a rule of thumb measurement I use to measure our intellectual property, the level of knowledge assets that we have.
Okay. How can us geeks find clients for our products and services?
I think that's a good question that I think Janet is more qualified to answer. You use SEO, you use online marketing, you use networking. So a shameless plug for the SEO class that Miss Janet is holding in the future. If you need to know how to get clients, take up that course. I'm a practitioner. I can tell you, my investment in SEO 5 years back are still getting me clients, even up to now. I don't have to go out and market, at least inquiries. I get inquiries because of those SEO techniques.
Okay. The labor market is different in Singapore compared to the Philippines. Do you think your same approach of hiring or management strategy will work in Singapore?
Yes, it is different, and it may surprise you to learn that there's no minimum wage law in Singapore. So in theory, I can hire people for as low as $1, and I do not have to be a foul of the Singaporean government here. And the irony is, the wages in Singapore are higher, in fact, than in the Philippines. So if there are people in government listening right now, I think you better take a look at your so-called minimum wage law.
Okay. Here's another question, Wilson. Hold on, let me just, how do you handle the failed projects or decisions that has failed?
You quietly bury them where nobody will remember that you have failed projects. So, people like to talk about successes. Nobody likes to talk about failure. But I can assure you that for each successful project that we have around 9 buried bodies somewhere that we don't tell people about. But in essence, you learn from the mistakes. That's the only thing. That's the positive thing that you do, is you learn from your failures.
Okay. And then, apart from Guy Kawasaki, who else are your business heroes, both local and international?
Sorry, I just got the text from Mr. Lim Teng Han that I did not answer his question. What? Can you repeat the question again?
Actually, you did. That was the last question. The labor market.
The labor market. So yes, apparently he's texting me and saying that I did not answer his question. So can you repeat the question again so I can answer him properly?
The labor market is different in Singapore compared to the Philippines. Do you think your same approach of hiring or management strategy will work in Singapore?
The same approach will work, but why would I hire people in Singapore now when I can rely on good people in the Philippines? Yeah.
Okay. So meaning if you have resources that you can work with in the Philippines.
Can you say that again, Janet?
So what you're saying is that if you have enough resources already with your people in the Philippines, there's no rush to get people in Singapore.
Yes.
Okay.
I still am not at the stage, but I would suspect that the same philosophy or management style should work with Singaporeans here. But I am wondering why I would want to do that when I have great people that I can work with in the Philippines and elsewhere.
Okay. There's this related question. What's the best way to meet clients for your BPO services? Can I say that it's still the same answer, your SEO thing earlier?
What is the best way to get clients?
To meet clients for your BPO service. Yes.
I think, for Farm Out, what I can tell you is that the first client is really the hardest client to get. But once you have the first client and you do very well and they're very happy, you can use them as reference. And once you have that reference, they will in fact refer you. Most of our clients are word-of-mouth referral from our other clients. So my advice is, I can share with you what I did to get the first client, because people, when you start out, you don't have experience, you don't have referrals, so people are going to ask you, why should I do business with you? You have no track record, you have nothing to show, I'm taking a big risk. And so what I advise you to do is you transfer the risk to yourself.
not to your first client. So you can offer things like, okay, to make it a risk-free for you, I can offer X days of work for free to let you try it out. So if you're really good, you know, the client, and you have a good and great client, that client will not abuse you. They will see that, okay, you guys are hungry, you guys are good, you guys are starting up, and they would even want to support you because they know that because they are your first client, you will take super good care of them. And then once you have that first client, the next few clients that roll out will be easier.
Okay. There was this question earlier before we got the reclarification. Who are your business heroes?
Sorry?
Who are your business heroes?
Business heroes.
Yes, both local and international. I guess in addition to Guy Kawasaki.
Of course, Guy Kawasaki. Did I share with you that I cold call Guy Kawasaki one time?
Yes,
I wanted to sell him some of our services, and he ended up selling me his book, The Art of the Start. And he was really, really great guy. Heroes. I have a lot of people that I really admire. Offhand, Muhammad Yunus. Have you heard of Grameen Bank? Grameen Bank in I wanted to say Lee Kuan Yew publicly, but Lee Kuan Yew is a great leader, but not a business leader. I think the question was business.
That's right. Business, it's more business.
Leader, right? If it were just a leader, I would hands down say Lee Kuan Yew. Look at what he did to Singapore. Singapore is just even smaller than Pangasinan. And yet when Citibank needed the money, they ran to Singapore to borrow money from Singapore. Citibank. So again, we were digressing. What was the question again? Heroes. Heroes. Who others?
Okay,
Ariel Roda. I think he's also a member. No.
No, he's not a member. But yes, Ariel Roda. Okay.
Ariel Roda, whenever I have the chance in the Philippines, I always make sure that I have a dinner or lunch engagement with Ariel. You know, he was the guy that made PLDT into our competitor. He was the guy, because of him, PLDT went into the internet side business. And I think you should get Ariel to talk about those experiences. He's a very interesting guy to talk to, and you get a lot of insights.
And in fact, Ariel is also involved in coaching and mentoring before early last year. And he's also helping a few startups. Okay, here's another question, Wilson. In Singapore, is setting up a business is easy, which also means ease of entry for competitors. So what kind of mindset should a startup adopt? Because this environment could also be a hindrance.
Well, I would refer you to the ASEAN Plan 2015. The entire ASEAN, the plan was for the entire ASEAN to become an integrated ecosystem, right? Where supposedly labor and capital could move freely between Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. I don't know where they are right now, but then going back to the question of if you have, if it's easy to come into Singapore, then your competitors should also be easy. Well, yes and no. Recently, there have been some electoral changes which has affected the direction of the Singapore government. During my time, when I applied 2007, Singapore was very open to foreigners. That has since changed a little bit, so it's now hard to get in. Now, if you want references, you go to Pinoy SG. What was the website again? PinoySG.com. You go to PinoySG.com and you will see all the anecdotes of people trying to get into Singapore, and those that are successful and those that are not so successful. And so when you talk about increased competition, I think the paradigm has already changed.
we should not think of our own locality. We should think globally. True, we will have worldwide competition, but then again, because of internet technology and collaboration tools, I can also source my partners and people globally as well. So like I've worked with Bangladeshi, Pakistanis, and Indian developers. One of my partners in England right now, and I'm in Singapore. Most of my people and my partners are in the Philippines. So I work from a virtual office. And I think that is why, if you see one of my slides, that is one of my predictions. And that is one of my goals right now, is to learn more about virtual management, to learn more about the idea around knowledge management, how to protect, increase your knowledge assets.
Okay. I think, okay, I have one more question here from those who registered about mobile. In the increasing popularity of smartphones and its growing number of users, as you mentioned earlier, what's your insight on the future of e-commerce and its convergence with mobile?
Just this morning, I had a meeting with my staff at Bitstop, and I shared this with them as well. This slide. I think smartphones and tablets are the wave of the future, at least for the next 3 or 4 years, and more computing will be done on those personal devices than on desktop. However, that is not to say that the desktop will die an immediate death. It will still hang around for the next few years. So if you are developers and you are developing application, would you want to develop applications on desktop that are going down, or would you want to develop applications on smartphones and tablets that are going up? I think the answer to that is fairly obvious.
Okay. Here's another question. If there's an investor who's bringing in a large amount of money in our startup company in exchange for equity, how can we be protected from being diluted?
That's an entire course in NUS. Digital entrepreneurship. You go out and buy this book by Nisheim. The author is Nisheim. It's our textbook. I can share the link later with you guys. But then, you know, there's no hard and fast rules over that. Let's say I am the investor, and Janet, you have the idea, and I come to you and I offer you X amount of money for X percentage. How do you know if it's fair or not, right? You don't, because there's no benchmark that I know of. Each business is unique. But I do also have to add in that when VCs come to you, like MIH came to RJ and invested in Sulit, the other thing you look at a VC, aside from the money, is their connection and their level of expertise. Like if somebody from Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield and Byers, or DFJ, or Sequoia Capital were to come and invest in my company, I wouldn't even be bothered about the money, because I know they can open a lot of doors for me. So that's also a great segue to share our plans, Janet, with the rest of the participants today. Janet and I wanted to concentrate our talents or resources into helping develop entrepreneurs in the Philippines. And understandably, because the Philippines does not have a superior IP protection, I would urge the qualified startups there to incorporate instead in Singapore, right? And this is where Janet and I can both help you.
Yes, what will happen there is that we intend to help 100 startup entrepreneurs this year. And the application for the pitching will be open tomorrow, so you can expect us to make an announcement tomorrow. And the moment, once we the moment we start receiving applications, we will be scheduling you for a webinar pitch like this one that we're having right now. And the ones with international potential, we will encourage you to get started in Singapore so that you can also avail of a lot of the grants and benefits there. But for those that are focused more on the local market, that may not be ready for Singapore. Definitely, I will still help you out, and we have a different fund set up for that.
Right.
So Wilson, so excited tayo, no? So we can't wait to open up the program starting tomorrow.
Yeah, we're ready to go. Yeah. What else? I still remember needing to say something else or sharing something else. Yeah, right. My brother-in-law wants me to say this on the air that if you are interested in coming over, yeah, I just remembered. This probably nobody knows, only the two of us with Miss Janet. We met up with NRF chairman, Professor Francis Yeo, and we asked him, can we get Philippine companies over to pitch in the Tech Venture 2012? And he said yes, as long as they're Singaporean company and incorporated here. So our private goal with Miss Janet is to at least, can we, out of those 100, at least send 5 to pitch in the Tech Venture 2012? That is our immediate goal for this year. And I hope we can see the great ideas percolate to the top. And again, going back to what my brother-in-law says, you have to know that MRT now is overcrowded. So take the taxi when you're here.
Ganon. Ganun ba yun? Okay. All right. Okay, so I think we don't have... okay, there's a question here from Unix. For the startup pitch event, do we have to present a working product already? Actually, we're quite flexible because we would like to avoid the same situation that is happening right now in a lot of the startup workshops where, let's say, out of 100, only out of 300 or out of 600, only 3 to 6 pitches get the help that we need. So in our case, we're quite flexible in working with a lot of startups, regardless of what stages they are in. However, the initial discussion that we had, more or less, is that the startup will more or less have a commitment with us in a sense that they will allow us to get at least 5% of the company the moment we agree that we will start working together and develop your idea. So that is the initial perspective that we had about this project. And we're going to fine-tune our process along the way, but we realized that we need to be flexible and understand that different startups have different requirements, different situation, and different sensitivities as well as to the kind of investment that they would like to take in for their respective companies. Okay? And then Joseph is asking, Wilson, can he borrow your developers?
I don't have developers. What I do is I outsource them to my friends and contacts in Pakistan, India, Ukraine. I work from a global office perspective.
What will happen there, Joseph, is that when you pitch for the project idea, I guess we will have to understand at what point are you in, and then we can decide from there whether you will need a technical founder who can help you in your business if you don't have the technical skills. However, if you have the technical skills and then you just need some of the components to be worked on, then I guess that can be what you will be asking for insofar as the partnership is insofar as the investment is concerned. That can be the trade that you will ask. So that means that we will get resource from our own pool to help you build your product, or we will help you source it out and fund it. So So that's what I meant when I say that we will be flexible. It depends on the proposal that you have. However, we always suggest that to get a technical co-founder to ensure the security of your idea and of your project, because without a technical co-founder and being reliant on working developers can pose a challenge in terms of sustaining a project. So that is our only concern there.
Magaling.
Okay, so I guess that's it for tonight. So we will be uploading the presentation of Wilson along with the video, and we look forward announcing the form that will be open for everyone interested to join in this project. We're still going to scout on who will be our next webinar speaker, but I think we are already. I think we're ready to do our pitching sessions. I think we've done a good series as a start, and then we will progress from there based on the needs of the applicants. We will organize more webinar sessions from there, and hopefully help more startups in the process. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining this webinar. Okay, I have a last question from Mr. Teng Han Lim. Pitching also means exposing my ideas. I guess that's the risk that you have to take when you pitch for funding. You will have to take that risk in terms of exposing your idea. So that is also the reason why we did this webinar series, because we would like to give something first to the public without asking anything in return before we start opening our pitches, before we start opening the doors for pitches, because we want to show to the public that we're here more to help, and that's the reason why we did not rush in and just ask for people to submit applications. We want to make sure that we'll be doing it right, and at the same time also get a comfort level with the people, that we have enough materials. You will have enough information about your mentors / angel investors, where they come from, what's their thinking, their experiences, because all of these are uploaded online, so that it's up to you whether you will gamble and take the risk in terms of exposing your ideas with us and want to work with us in terms of developing your project idea. But definitely our commitment is there to help 100 entrepreneurs. Okay, so with that, thank you again, Wilson. And of course, thank you, Jam, for helping us out tonight. And to leave this webinar, just click on File, Exit, Leave Webinar. Please expect an email from us